Well, hello, everybody.
Happy Thursday.
Yeah, happy Thursday.
Almost the weekend.
Oh, that was interesting.
Right? Makes me happy, though, that it's almost the weekend.
Yeah, we got friends coming over all weekend, and then we're heading to the States this weekend, the U.S., to go see your friend Randy.
We are, and I'm looking forward to seeing Randy and Kim. Apparently, they're doing a rally. It's raising funds for the New York State Audit Group, who are trying to prove that the New York State Audit was a fraud, and they are doing a really great job. But we all know lawyers cost money, travel costs money, knocking on doors costs money. Paperwork costs money. So they are having a big fundraiser in Buffalo, New York. So if you can get on down there on Saturday, please do. And you'll get to meet some Canadian truckers. I believe Harold Jonker's crew is going to be down there and we'll be there. So yay.
So I mean, what they learn benefits us. So we go in to support that as much as humanly possible. Yeah.
And it's the long weekend here in Canada. For those of you who are watching in the States, we get Monday off. So we will be enjoying a long weekend with friends. We also have the Hub for Humankind on Sunday at Souls Path. To get tickets for that, it's soulspath.ca. I will be presenting a workshop called A Year of Yes and Owning Your No on Sunday. And I believe that starts at 11 or 11:30 in the morning. So you will be able to hear me if you want to, but there are 4 different hubs happening, and I will be part of the Freedom and Truth Hub, and that's where you'll find me.
Awesome. I will be in bed. Yeah, so that's where I'll be. I'll be conducting my own private meeting in my sleep. So, so we're still kind of doing this. Those deep dives take a lot out of us, and sometimes we just miss doing the news, and I think that's what we're going to do tonight. Things that you may or may not have heard about.
And if we don't do the news, then you can always catch our newsletter, because whatever we don't cover on the show, we definitely cover in our newsletter. And I think weekly. It goes out usually Sundays. Right. Sometimes it's a little late, depending on what we got going on. It might be Monday, but it's typically Sunday that it goes out. And you'll get at least 40 plus stories in our newsletters. So it keeps you up to date, and it keeps you from having to read from, I don't know, sometimes there's 20 different sources that we're pulling from. So we will stay on top of that for you guys.
Right. And we tend to try and do stuff that isn't in the mainstream, is that not everybody is covering. We try to do the stuff that people have missed and passed over. So so you're in the know. You're getting all the well-rounded. You're getting all the big stuff in the news, and then you're getting all the stuff that they try to slide under the radar. So that is just head over to tfmreport.com and sign up for the newsletter. You'll get prompted immediately when you're there. Yeah.
There you go. Now, we did last Monday, not Monday of this week that just passed, but the Monday before, we started our tree gardens, and we put our little seedlings in the tree garden, and we promised you we would keep you updated. So I believe Chris has a video from earlier today, so you can see exactly how the tree gardens are going. And we do carry those on our partner tab on tfmreport.com. So if you're interested in growing your own food in your house, free from chemtrails, then please check out our partners page and click on the button for the tree gardens. It takes you right there. There's no searching you have to do. Everything is right there.
Yeah.
So we're going to show you how well our plants are doing right now. And it's only been, 11 days since we put it in the tree garden.
Yeah, so 11 days. So we promised an update. Here it is.
Hey, everybody. We promised you we would do an update on our tree gardens. So 10 days ago, or I guess 11 days ago now, we took our seedlings and planted them in our tree garden. I want you to see where they're at now. Look at these. These are tomato plants. In 11 days, they went from little seedlings like this to this. These are our tomato plants. These will be cucumbers. And then up here, we've got strawberries starting. They're not as big, but that's okay. They're strawberries. Now I'm going to take you over here to this one, and we've got arugula, and we've got spinach, and we've got kale growing, and we've got bib lettuce and gourmet lettuce. and Swiss chard happening. Look at how much growth has happened in 11 days in our tree gardens. So in case you were wondering if they work, yes, they do. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Absolutely beautiful. That is actually going to be honeydew and cantaloupe and butternut squash. So yes, folks, you can grow an entire meal on your tree gardens. We will keep you updated.
That's awesome. Yeah, they're coming along so quickly. It's unbelievable how fast those things grow. However, it looks like a massive grow up from the outside of the house. And you could probably guide planes onto your road with those. Those things are so bright.
They are. But that's okay. It's only for a couple hours a day that those lights are on. And hi, James. Good to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you.
Hey, James. It's been a while.
Commenting. Yeah. I'm sure you've been watching. It's just commenting that we don't get to see you do very often. So welcome back.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the garden tower. We got a couple things from Michael Chuchong today. Let's just start with this one. Could there be a better place to start?
Well, we all miss Chandler's face. So let's start with Mr. Friends. Researchers build AI-driven sarcasm detector. So this is a story letting us know how far they've come with AI and how it is going to be very difficult coming here soon to tell the difference between AI and real-life human beings. As researchers in the Netherlands have built an AI-driven sarcasm detector that can spot when the lowest form of wit and the highest form of intelligence is being deployed. The group trained a neural network on text, audio, and emotional content of video clips from US sitcoms, including Friends and The Big Bang Theory. The database, known as Mustard, was compiled by researchers in the US and Singapore who annotated sentences from the TV shows with sarcasm labels to build their own detector. This kind of scares the crap out of me.
Are you being sarcastic? Because I can't tell.
No.
Thank God we have an AI that can help me out now.
No, I am not being sarcastic. More and more people are being whittled out of the entertainment industry, the art industry, the news industry. And it's eventually taking over our social media. We're not going to know the difference between real and not real soon enough. This article mentioned that they were at a 75% success rate with AI recognizing the difference between sarcasm and wit and humor and all of that. So
that's better than the autistic kids.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's scary.
It is. You got to be on the ball. I swear that new Kenny Chesney song. I'm not sure how new it is, but the kids are all right. It is every single stereotype, and it's like somebody plugged in to Chat GPT, like write me a song based on every country slogan you can think of. Right. So I swear that song has been written by AI, and why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they get AI to write a song? They put some music to it. They don't have to pay a lyricist anymore. They don't have to pay the rights. They don't have to share any of that stuff.
And this is what I'm talking about. So many people are being literally invented out of their jobs. Yeah. And, I never thought that a robot would be able to take over the arts. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they're training the robots to do. And they're training them on the right shows. I'll definitely say that. Friends with Chandler was very sarcastic. And then you've got The Big Bang, right? Where they were actually trying to teach Sheldon the difference between humor and sarcasm and wit. Yeah. And now they're using those very episodes to teach AI. And we already know AI. A lot of people are using Chat GPT. Even in the real estate industry, people are using Chat GPT now to market and advertise.
Sure. And Jake showed us this video of a guy talking to this AI female. And he's like, I got a big job interview. And she's, oh, well, that's great, she says. And he's like, how do I look? And she goes, well, I guess if you're going for the I was up all night coding look, you got that nailed, but maybe you should run a hand through your hair. So she's being a little bit flirty. She was being a little bit sarcastic.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's come a long way. So yeah, I mean, you've got to be on the ball now.
Right.
I mean, I remember that story when we got called by AI pretending to be a
Yes.
friend of ours, and sounded just like a friend of ours, but he left a message, and then I phoned him back. He's like, I never called you. And so it had to be AI testing the system.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So this is really scary. It reminds me of that movie with Joaquin Phoenix. I think it was called Her, where he falls in love with his chatbot or whatever you want to call it, Siri, Alexa, whatever. He falls in love with her because she's flirting with him, she's giggling with him, laughing at his jokes, listening to his sad stories, and really has become a companion. And so the fact that they've gotten this far in real life with AI is super scary. What does it mean for communication and human contact going forward?
Right. Exactly. So AI, I'm not too worried about it. I'm just, doubling down on my hermit cave. That's all. Yeah. So we've been talking lots about, what have we been talking about? Lots about the stores and the
Banking system?
no, the cameras that are going up above
Oh, the
doors
surveillance.
and doors, like gates coming in at, coming into the stores as well as going out of the stores. And we've been bringing that to everybody's attention for quite a while. And so CBC's been running a bunch of stories on it. They've done a bunch of stories. Now, I actually think that CBC is doing this to do a propaganda campaign against Loblaw. So I'm not entirely sure what happened with Loblaw in the background. Most of these stories were focused on Loblaw, even though there are other stores involved. Anyway, so they ran 3 stories about shopping carts that lock and security gates. Shoppers sound off on retail's anti-theft tactics. They're mad. Self-checkout theft causing problems for realtors and shoppers who despise receipt checks. So they're mad at that. Customers are fed up with anti-theft measures at stores. Retailers say organized crime is to blame. Now, shoppers are complaining about metal security gates, plexiglass carts that lock up receipt checks in Loblaws, as well as
Zehrs and Walmart,
Canadian Tire.
Yeah.
They all say that organized retail crime is growing, with thieves stealing large amounts of pricey items such as cosmetics and baby formula, which they resell online. I don't know if that's organized crime or it's just a bunch of opportunists.
Teenagers looking for a free ride.
Right. So the retailers will keep offering self-checkout as long as the money they save from reduced labor costs is higher than what they lose due to theft and scanning mistakes. So that's how you stop globalism, folks. It's the same as Napster. When Napster came out, people were complaining. They were like, you don't steal, don't pirate music. But when they came out, people forget CDs back in like the early 90s were heading upwards of $25.
Yes.
So they had gone up in the last 3 years. They'd gone from like average $12 to $15 and it shot right up, and you were starting to pay like $25, $27. Napster comes along. And people start using that, and they're not buying CDs anymore. And all of a sudden, the price regulates back down with CDs.
Well, they were buying CDs, but they were buying blank CDs so that they could record the Napster songs that they downloaded for free onto those CDs.
Right. And then they started charging you extra money for those blank CDs, and extra money went to with publishing houses or producers to offset the cost of the theft. And then it was pretty much like a permission granted at that point. Well, if I'm paying for their music now anyway, I may as well do it and pull it off Napster and put it on a CD, because now I'm getting charged for it anyway.
Exactly.
Right. And so, but Napster, by what they would have considered back then, is highly illegal. I mean, Metallica railed against it. Yeah. So back then it was that illegal activity that actually kept the market honest.
Yeah.
And so what they're saying to you is, if people steal, then they're going to take out self-checkouts.
Or conveniently misswipe or misscale an item for a cheaper item. Then there's no way to prove that you were stealing, is what they're saying. There's no way to prove that you were stealing. So yeah, but people, this actually made me happy. That people are, because when they first started happening, and 2 years ago when we first started bringing it to your attention, people were like, well, it's to cut down on theft. And I kept saying, but nobody's stealing going into the store. It's coming out of the store that people might be stealing. So why are they gating coming in? And now we have children. We all know children are distracted very, very easily, that are walking into the gates. They're taking themselves out in walking into the plexiglass because they don't see it, and they're knocking themselves out. And moms are now starting to get really angry by this, and other honest customers who are walking out are getting stopped at the door for random receipt checks. Or in the one case, this elderly woman was going out, and all of a sudden her cart locks up, and these massive alarms are going off, and they come running, and now everybody's looking because they all think she's stealing. They demand her receipt, and now she's fumbling, can't find her receipt. It turns out it's in one of the bags. And so they pull it out, and everything was fine, but then they didn't know how to unlock the cart, and they had to go and search for this device that finally unlocked the cart. And after that, the lady said, I will never shop here again. And I'm seeing more and more people saying, I will never shop there. I will never go through that experience again. The random receipt checks and the alarms and the carts locking up. So I'm thinking when the retailers say, we will stop doing the self-checkouts once we see that the cost of goods sold is now going the opposite way. I'm thinking when customers stop shopping in your store and start spreading that around, that we will probably see the beginning of the end of the gates and the alarms and the selfless checkouts. I'm hoping. But it did make me encouraged, because we had a conversation earlier today about where do you think the freedom movement is going? Are we winning or losing? Do you think people will join in the fight when enough tyranny or oppression has happened to them? And you were of one opinion, I was of the other. And I went, bang. See, these are baby steps. But people who weren't maybe necessarily in the freedom fight are now getting angry, because it's now becoming not only an inconvenience, but a shaming tool and an embarrassing tool. And that is public shaming, public embarrassment. And they're starting to say, nope, I'm not shopping here anymore. No, I'm not going through this again. So this is good. They're starting to fight back.
It's a start. And some more of the pushback is on the illegal aliens. We're starting to see lots of science come out, lots of reports on them now. So I think that's another one. It's funny because we brought up during the Committee of 300, we brought up the fact that free trade is actually killing our economy, probably worse than anything else. Before free trade, we would charge foreign companies to come in or do business with Canada. So for example, what a great thing would be to tax Walmart very heavily, because Walmart is a globalist company and all their money goes out of our country. So that would be who we should be taxing heavily, instead of, we'll bring it up later, instead of the people who've worked hard all their lives in Canada. So we're seeing the smatterings. But back then, when they were pushing free trade, they were accusing people of being isolationists. These are the people against globalism. So they've had a word for everything. When you oppose the globalist push agenda, step by step, they come up with a word to try and shame that portion of the population and shut them up like it's a bad thing, and so they come up with a term for it.
But now they're shaming the people who actually were for their agenda, and now those people are not happy. So this is good news.
Exactly. And another one is racism. When, you've got very valid concerns about the amount of illegal aliens that are coming in. And
products being brought in from China and Taiwan, and we're saying, whoa, our manufacturing has left the building, and we're allowing this to come in for free. This isn't good. And then they yell, you're racist.
All racism, right? So, but then we get stuff like this. We've got Laken Riley, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. And so there's more of that going on. So Muckraker did this story, and it's actually pretty involved.
Meet California. Muckraker spoke with Chinese illegal aliens who are part of a black market employment scheme. Illegal aliens with no background checks are driving for DoorDash and Uber by renting accounts from other drivers, many of whom are illegal aliens themselves. Jose Ibarra, the illegal alien who murdered Laken Riley, allegedly drove for Uber Eats and DoorDash most likely through a similar scheme. The illegals we spoke to also said that there are Chinese spies living in America, and said that they fear the CCP may retaliate against their families. This is what the fraudulent drivers told us.
How do you drive an Uber that's not your account? Can you explain the way that works? How do you do that?
就是这个五保号不是你的
啊，不是，
你是怎么
我实话实说就行是吧？
对，你就怎么用这个五保号跑呢？因为它不是你的，你是怎么跑的？
这不揭露行业秘密吗？
对，
那这么揭，这不坏事吗？这我还有什么饭吃？
没事儿，
没事吗？
没事儿。
那个用租赁别人的号吗？可以这么说吧？
对，
租赁别人的。
Another one's Uber account.
What percentage of the money do you keep?
你自己留多少钱？就百分比。
85%。
85%.
85%. And then do you pay taxes on the money? Do you pay taxes to the government?
你给政府交税吗？
那个号主会交税的吧？
So the owner will pay the tax because the owner keeps that 15%.
Does DoorDash check who's driving or no?
DoorDash 这个账号，它核查你的护照里面。
这是别人的账号，租的别人的账号，我的没查。
No, because DoorDash account has already checked the owner's driving license, but not his.
And so how much money do you make maybe in 1 week?
你一周大概能赚多少钱？
一周大概1300到1400。
Given the first-hand accounts of CCP influence that we have shown in this video, it's worth considering the possibility that Chinese drivers could be coerced to engage in espionage activities, including spying on people or neighborhoods during deliveries, or even bugging homes. It's also reasonable to suppose that a criminal alien taking advantage of this system could use the opportunity to murder someone in cold blood, as happened to Lake and Riley. These platforms are facilitating a potential national security threat, and it does not appear much is being done to stop it.
Right.
Yeah, and they did bring up the CCP being there, and does the CCP know that you're doing this? And they're like, oh, no. And they said, well, what would happen? And they're like, well, they would come after our families, and they would put pressure on us, and they would censor us and whatnot, which is one of the reasons why the one gentleman's face was completely blurred, because he didn't want to take any chances. But this is happening more and more, and people are wondering how these immigrants are illegal immigrants, not coming in legally, but coming in illegally. How are they making their money? Well,
right. They get accelerated tracks into Uber and DoorDash here in Canada. And we brought that up a while ago, and we had a lot of the same concerns, because who knows what they're being employed to do, because they're in charge of people's whereabouts. And what a great way to get them to understand cities and learn the ins and outs of cities really fast. And yeah, so
well, and now we know the Uber driver we think is picking us up, or the Uber Eats guy or DoorDash guy that's coming to our door, may not actually be the guy who has that account, the guy that has been security cleared and criminal checks and all that. Now we're finding out that those aren't necessarily the drivers that are picking you up. So you don't know who these drivers actually are, what kind of criminal checks they've actually gone through,
right,
because people are just lending out their accounts to anybody and everybody, which puts you in a very precarious situation. And if you are somebody that maybe the federal government or military or CIA or FBI or MI6 wants information on, nothing for a DoorDash guy to throw something on your door.
Yeah, so they're getting paid. Like Canada's paying all these, they're illegals, and they're not even landed properly, and they're paying them for hotels, they're giving them wages, and they're doing the same thing in the States. And now it's like there's this UBI has exploded everywhere. Google is co-founding a guaranteed basic income that gives families $12,000 a year to help them stay housed. Houston's basic income participants plan to spend about $500 a month on rent and groceries, but the Texas Supreme Court temporarily blocked the program.
Thank you, Texas Supreme Court.
Yeah, well, basically, it's against their constitution for government monies to go to any one individual. So they're not allowed to have show favoritism or right. So so they're not sure that that's going to work. So they've blocked it so far. 11 states with guaranteed basic income programs that gave residents hundreds of dollars a month with no strings attached. College Town, I forget where this was, is experimenting with giving low income entrepreneurs and gig workers $12,672 with no strings attached. Seattle gave low income residents $500 a month, no strings attached. Employment rates nearly doubled. Now, in that particular regard, I could actually see that because these people don't have, means to get new clothes. They don't have resumes. They don't have. So this gives, some of these people a leg up. Yeah.
Or pays for childcare so that they can now go to work.
Right. So that's, it's not. Some of that stuff's not terrible for sure. But it's coming. The problem is, where is this money coming from?
It's coming from taxpayers' dollars. It's coming from you and I, and we all know what happened during CERB when people were able to go back to work. They decided not to go back to work because it was easier to stay home, or they made more money staying at home with $2,000 in their pocket that our government was giving at the time. Now
loaning is what they're finding.
what they didn't tell them at the time. But our government is introducing as well a guaranteed basic income or basic living wage to people as well. And what happens is people get used to getting free money. And when you get used to getting free money and the government wants to now pull that away unless you do something for it, we know that it's just another control mechanism, an incentive for you to put up and shut up, another way for them to control you. And we all know that coming down the pipe is digital ID, CBDC, just ways for the government to control you. So once you get used to receiving this free money that pays for the extras, nobody wants to give that up, but they will give up their privacy and they will give up all kinds of things in order to get that free convenience.
But who's paying for that? That's the thing. If we're not taxing the big globalist corporations, it is very, very basic economics when you say, if we have all the money going out of the country and we have a select few people who are still paying the bills, and that is the richer people, the people that they're trying to equalize right now.
Well, the richer people don't pay the bills because they know all the loopholes in the taxes, and they
but you know what I
get
mean.
themselves
You know
into
what I mean,
foundations,
right?
and the money goes elsewhere.
So not splitting hairs, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got Walmart, for example, who is all of their profits. They give some back to the community, but the majority go out of the country. Costco, the majority goes out of the country. All these big globalist chains, the money goes out of the country. Then you've got immigrants, landed or non-landed immigrants. Where are their money going? They're coming here to support their families back in other countries. So our money is now going out of the country, and it's not coming back. It used to be that you'd make money and you'd spend money at a local store, and they would in turn spend money in their community,
and the money would circulate.
And where'd that money coming from? Well, we had all the manufacturing jobs. Yes. So before World War I, before the federal tax came in, how did the highways get built? How did the federal infrastructure get built? Well, they were built off global tariffs.
Global tariffs, yeah. Which is why back in the day, 95% of the stuff was actually made in Canada or the US of A. But now those numbers are flipped again because of free trade agreements. Now tariffs are not being charged to foreign entities to bring their stuff here. And so what's happened is again, I think we talked about this on Monday, but all of our labor manufacturing jobs that used to pay really well to the middle class have now been shipped out to slave labor countries. We allow them to bring in their products for free. The Canadians now have to pay taxes to cover off that lost revenue that we used to bring in. But not only that, we're now buying their products. So our money, our own cash currency is now leaving the country, going to China, which means there's less money staying in our country to pay for roads and infrastructure. So then we get another tax slapped on us
Right.
to cover those expenses. And then the government goes, oh, we need another program, or we need to hire more people to cover that tax program. So now we're going to hire more people. And guess what? Another tax gets laid on us because we have to
Right.
pay for those people's
It's even
salaries
worse.
now.
It's even worse than that, though, because at least we have resources. But now a portion of our mines, a good chunk of our mines and our forestry and our fishing have now been
Foreign bought out.
Yeah, they've given
They've sold it to-
permission to foreign companies. So the foreign companies come in, they mine our steel, they send it back to their countries. They have their people manufacture it into cheap products, which they send to Walmart, which we pay for. There's no income in our
Exactly.
country, and it's all going out now, and it's going out in droves through these massive amounts of immigrants that are undocumented, and these globalist countries that are companies that we're giving more money to because our globalist deputy prime minister is with the WHO, and then the next prime minister that's coming along the pipe, we'll talk about him in a minute, he's with the World Economic Forum, I mean.
So our
Right.
money has stopped circulating within Canada.
Right.
It's just going out and going out and going
Right.
out instead of staying here circulating. So we are losing our fiat currency.
So the only people that had money were the people who had been the older generation who would work all their lives to save money and get ahead. And now we're doing these extra capital gains tax. And now you got Trudeau saying this stuff.
Made the decision to ask the wealthiest, often of older generations, whose money works for them, instead of necessarily them working as hard as these young people are for their money, for their salaries. We've raised the capital gain inclusion rate to make sure that the people who've done the best over the past years in a society and an economy that is tilted slightly towards them actually gets retilted a bit more towards the young people we need to continue to grow our economy long into the future.
He's acting as if, there's
He
never.
just hates the old people.
He
He hates our grandparents. He hates our parents and our grandparents. Hates them.
He acts as if we all didn't start with nothing. We started with nothing and worked our way into things. And he's
Exactly.
talking about these people who worked hard all their lives,
They were young ones too.
saved their money, and they didn't have money once. So the young people today, what we're saying is we're going to take the money off people who've actually worked hard for it. We're going to take the sweat of their back, and we're going to give it to people who haven't earned it yet.
Exactly.
And eventually those people are going to leave the country. So where will the money come from? Yeah. So that is frustrating, obviously.
But he's
Frustrating a lot
also
of us here.
insinuating that our older generation are lazy because they no longer contribute to society. They don't work as hard anymore. But you know
Right.
what? They worked hard for 40 years, for 50 years. They deserve to now take a break. And it's up to the young people now to work hard.
And as much as that's frustrating, he is at least, he's the half-wit we know. He's the half-wit we get, the MK Ultra baby that we understand, right? There is a lot of rumor now. Up until I'd say about 5 months ago, I would have thought Dominic LeBlanc was going to be primed for the next prime minister.
That way.
Yeah, because he was always in the shadows. He was the head of the Privy Council. He actually controlled pensions for the other MPs. So he had a lot of power and was very quiet and never really was in the news. And then all of a sudden he steps up into the cabinet. And I'm like, well, they're priming him. They're getting him ready to be the next prime minister. But now a lot of rumor is coming forward that it's going to be Mark Carney. A lot of speculation about Mark Carney. We've talked about Mark Carney. We're going to do, I'm doing a deep dive on Mark Carney and our Substack right now. But you think Trudeau is bad. This man in 1.5 minutes, he says everything that we've been talking about in a year. And he is all over this, because it looks like he helped manufacture the 2008 crash.
Yes.
And the 2008 crash, now where all the research we've done looks like it wasn't the way it was positioned.
It was planned.
It was planned to bring in global banking. So here's Mark Carney.
Finance, and more specifically the private financial sector, what can it do to help solve this problem? So it's going to really have to step up, and there's been a lot of institutions, a lot of people around the world who've been working in order to do that.
Yeah, we don't even have a price on carbon yet. When will we get that?
Well, we don't have a price on carbon, but what I think our message on Wednesday to world leaders, to policymakers, to business people around the world is finance is going to be there, and finance is going to be there in two respects. One, we've retooled the financial system. We've changed the plumbing, if you will, the financial system, a bunch of very worthy reforms that actually, to be honest, only the audience of Bloomberg would fully understand and appreciate, and we can go through them for the next hour. But, think mandatory disclosure, think stress testing, all that. So part is retooling, but then it's also about financial institutions stepping up and saying that they are going to finance this transition, this enormous $100 trillion transition that needs to happen over the next 3 decades. They're going to finance it, and they're going to mark their own homework. They're going to show up year in, year out, say what their emissions are of their clients, have specific strategies for reducing carbon, fair share of 50% down by 2030.
So that is all this like bing, 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 bing. He's hitting them all.
And not embarrassed or ashamed to say it.
No, and he's calling it exciting and all that. Did you notice he said, not only they're going to mark their own report cards, but they're going to report on their clients as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking about that. They're going to pull funding from people who don't match up. Landlords are going to do the same thing because their carbon credit scores are going to be affected by their tenants. It's all coming down. It's doing this trickle effect down, and they know they've got it figured out. I wouldn't say Dominic LeBlanc. Jumo Lima says Dominic LeBlanc actually runs Trudeau. I would say it's the Bronfmans that are actually his handlers, but they look like good friends, but it's the Bronfmans and the Trudeaus. They've had a criminal empire for a very long time. So I think it's the Bronfmans that are actually handling him.
And they stay in the shadows.
They handle his trust fund as well. So because he's not allowed to be hands-on while he's prime minister, and magically they're doing a great job for him because for some reason he's just like a genius when it comes to stock markets. He knows what to buy and what to sell ahead of time.
This guy who admitted he doesn't know math, doesn't know how to add.
Apparently,
all of a sudden his holdings have skyrocketed.
Yeah, I wonder if the new AI system would pick up on that sarcasm. So, so let's surprise Michael Chuchong. Michael Chuchong's got a couple stories for us, so hopefully he's ready to go. Hey, Michael Chuchong, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
There you are. What do you got for us?
What do you got for us?
I was just looking into some things going on in the military, and I came across this article here about a sailor who told the Commons Committee about Officer X. So they're not sharing the accused's name, but he faces multiple allegations of harassment and police investigation since 2006. So this sailor made a statement to the parliamentary committee, and now it seems he's being harassed for making those statements as well. I guess I didn't put that clip in.
No, and he's the whistleblower, right? About this other officer with his sexual misconducts and abuse on the ships. He reported it properly, and now he's the one being harassed. The good guy is being harassed.
Yeah, Lieutenant Patrick White. Yeah, he's in the Navy, and he's talking about lots of cover-ups in the Navy as well, not specifically just this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think Drew McGilvery did an interview the other day, and he was saying the same thing. He was in the Navy, and that was one of the reasons why he got out, because he saw a lot of stuff that didn't resonate with his spiritual beliefs or moral beliefs.
Right. Yeah, Drew with Vets for Freedom. Yeah, we just watched him.
I think later in the article too, it talks about how this Officer X in his private life has a lot of access to underage children.
Oh dear.
Yeah, his civilian job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that means in the Navy, he's part of the civilian unit that goes out and helps the community, or if he actually has another job outside of the Navy. But that is a scary accusation or insinuation that Mr. White is putting out there.
Mm-hmm. It's curious why we don't know the accused's name.
Exactly. Who is he and how high up in the Navy is he is my question because they are saying since 2006 and he's still employed with the Navy. So who is he and what is his rank and why is he still there almost 20 years later after things started being reported?
Because he's doing what they need him to do.
Apparently. That's scary.
Yeah, there's a reason why General Vance was reprimanded and lost his position for sexual misconduct as well. It wasn't about the sexual misconduct. It was about him speaking out about other things like vaccine mandates for the military, as well as the psychological experiments that the Canadian military was performing on Canadians.
Right. They went through two senior officers at the same time, both accused of sexual misconduct. Like that seems to be their go-to, and both of them were refusing to enforce the vax on their own people. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were refusing to follow orders. So if you refuse to follow orders, you get allegations made against you and you lose your rank and possible, court-martialing. But if you're actually an officer that is most certainly had many, many accusations against them, not for not following orders, apparently if you follow orders, you're protected. That's pretty crappy.
Yeah, there was another article I pulled up, but I didn't manage to put a screenshot in. But there's a guy who's facing reprimand for derogatory comments about senior military officials and NATO.
Right. Yeah, that was Kearney, wasn't it?
Yes, Robert Kearney. Colonel Robert Kearney. Yeah.
Yes, he was mad at the anti-woke speech that was given by one of our generals, and that I remember that speech. It was about a year and a half ago.
We played it on the show.
Yeah, and he got a standing ovation for that, and he said what everyone was hoping he'd say, and then of course there's a big lash out now. What is it, a year and a half later?
Yeah.
So yeah. So it gave us hope that maybe the military was going to stand up, but they didn't.
Well, they might still be because Robert Kearney is being brought up on charges, and they're not saying what the charges are or what the statements are that he made, but they're saying that he's made several statements that don't resonate with the military, and so he's being brought up on these. I don't know if was it insubordination charges or.
It's this derogatory or defamatory comments about Canadian forces leaders. Yeah, I don't know the official charge, but I do have one of the quotes from his Facebook post here. So the gala was called the Vimy Gala. And he says it was sullied with arrogance and entitlement and not in keeping with the humility and spirit of the event. I hope that folks that have worn/wear the uniform, past and present, will not think that all senior leaders support the hubris and arrogance displayed over being humble, appreciative, and showing humility in such a forum. I also hope that more senior folks, retired and serving, will speak out in the future. So while I think we might not agree with Robert Kearney's perspective on what was said at that gala, this seems to be more about stopping the insubordination and scaring people from speaking up.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean,
more censorship. But he wants censorship in the military.
Well, but you've always been told to watch your opinion. You're representing the military, and you've always been, even their letters home are highly censored because they might say something top secret. So that's nothing new. It's odd that they're going after him for going after that one general, because I would think that the general wasn't in line with where they're heading as far as the military goes. But maybe there's different branches and different, organizations. So,
but they didn't say that was the reason why they were going after him. Just going through his Facebook and social media feeds, that was the only thing they could find that might bring these charges on him.
But he said stuff about NATO as well, yeah.
We don't know all of his other posts are always congratulatory or positive about.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we don't know what exactly maybe he's Officer X.
Yeah, maybe. We solved it.
Yeah, I think some of his statements were not on social media. They were amongst other military personnel, and they made complaints.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
you got to be careful about dissenting.
So what do you get from these articles that are coming out about our military? What is the insinuation about the shape that we're in?
Not good shape. Yeah, there's a lot of miscommunication, or I think their cult indoctrination isn't working to make them all just loyal soldiers.
Yay, that's encouraging for
It
us
is
again.
very
That's another win.
Some of them
I'll
are
take
escaping
it.
the brainwash. That's great.
That's it. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we got one more here on secrecy as well. Yeah, so National Defense wins an award for its efforts to hide information from the public.
Awesome.
The outstanding achievement in government secrecy was awarded by the Canadian Association of Journalists.
Oh, so this might be sarcasm.
The kettle calling the pot black.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, got it.
I thought it was I thought they were giving it to them as it was good at first.
Yeah, so it seems like it's like one of those Razzies or Rotten Tomato Awards, right?
Yes, yeah.
So that's good. Woof.
Yeah, but isn't it because they were requesting FOIs, the journalists were, and it took over 3 years to finally get the FOI?
Yeah.
I think it was 6 years. And
Was it 6 years? Wow.
It was about billions of dollars spent to make a ship. $80 billion is the estimate.
Wow.
Oh, you know that money went to Trudeau's friends. That's what he does with the money. That's why they had to forge up some paperwork.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, all that money's laundered somewhere else, obviously.
Oh, it does say 3 years. I thought I saw 6 somewhere, but maybe I'm confused. Yeah, 3 years.
Awesome.
Well, it's good to know that our military is waking up. They're not falling for, as you said, the MK Ultra conspiracies, but they are still trying to censor and hide stuff from Canadians.
Well,
too bad.
Yeah, and like you say, it's very ironic. The journalists would be handing that out. So
I think they're just trying to gain a little bit of credibility.
Too late.
Few years.
Yeah, well, you killed babies, so that's not happening anymore. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. That brings us up to speed. You're now our national defense reporter. So
yeah, I'd like to talk more about General Vance if I can get some time to do some research.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. See you guys.
You bet. Okay. Well, what about this? This is a good reminder to be very diligent all the time. So I guess in some parts of the country, it is normal for you to sign in to your doctor's office. I usually go in, they say my name, I say that's who I am, and they sign me in, whatever. But this lady says this is a good reminder. Be ever diligent.
I've seen this before. You know, like when you go to your doctor's office and they say, just sign here. Do any of you stop and say, what am I signing for? I had done that in the past, and they usually, you're just giving a doctor consent to see you. And of course, I would trust them, right? But not anymore, because I don't use this system. I would have to be on my deathbed and wanted to be saved. But anyway, the point is, have them print it out, read it. This is what happened to my girlfriend a month ago. She finally decided, you know what? I'm not signing that electrical thing anymore. I want to know what it says. Because it's a contract. You're putting your signature down. And the fact that they need your signature means they need you to consent. It took them a while to print this out because it was like 6 pages. And I guess nobody had ever asked them to print it before, so they didn't know how to use the system to do that. But once they got it printed out and she sat and read through it, you know what was at the end of it? You consent for your doctor to give you So know what you're signing. And this is not legal advice, but when you're going through a contract, you can't put a line through things. You can draw a line right through it and say, well, I agree to all this, but I don't agree to that. Put a line through it and sign it if you have to. Now, at the end of her appointment, she didn't sign it. She told them that, I don't consent to that. And, of course, they still want your money. They still want to collect the insurance payment, so they saw her anyway. No is the most underused word in our vocabulary. Now, I remember when I used to be a people pleaser, and it wasn't until I had read the book Boundaries. We need boundaries, people. And I started practicing saying no. So if you're someone who has a problem saying no, just start out small. A girlfriend called me up, and she invited me to one of those tea light parties, when that was all the fad. And I didn't really want to go. And so I wasn't being genuine if I were to tell her, yeah, I'll come to your party. So I said, no. Now, mind you, I'd never said no to her before, and so she was taken back in shock, and I think her feelings were hurt, but your feelings aren't my responsibility. I needed to set a boundary and say no. So if you're somebody who has trouble saying no, just start practicing with little things. Be genuine to yourself. If you don't want to go somewhere, don't go there. If you don't want to do something, don't do it. Learn to exercise the power of no, and here is a great place to start. Stop consenting to things when you don't know what you're consenting to.
That's good advice.
Great advice. Great advice. And you know what? I have signed those things in the past as well. And I never thought to ask, what exactly am I signing to? And lo and behold.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all do it, right? I signed the terms and conditions. Yes, I read them. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we all do it.
We do. And we're guilty of who knows what we're signing.
Wow.
And it's because we don't want to take the, hour to 2 hours to read the fine print and the 20 pages that they're going to print off for us.
Right.
And they do that on purpose.
The first episode of the last season of Black Mirror was really great. It was all about Netflix, and that you sign your consent to your image. And so AI was making realistic stories about people.
That was Joan, wasn't that what it was called?
Yeah, it was
Joan.
really great. And it was all in the terms and conditions, and she didn't read them, of course. And so they were using her life and rebroadcasting it because they were picking it all up on her phones and stuff like that. It was really great.
On her smart devices.
Yeah, it was one of the good ones. The last season of Black Mirror, I think, fell flat, but
yeah.
So here's something. Now I want to start by saying I'm calling BS on this story. I don't think it's actually true, but I'm not saying it couldn't be true. And I'm not saying this doesn't happen. Just the languaging makes me to kind of not believe that it's true, but I wanted to run it anyway, because we're talking about how money is leaving the country. And I'm sure this can happen. If it's not happening, I'm sure it could.
So I maxed out 1 million on my credit cards and fled the USA. Fellow Nitzians, I'm graduating from university and about to leave. Before returning to China, I maxed out my credit cards from various banks, personal and business cards totaling $140,000, equivalent to 1 million. I'm going to guess that's yen. A big thank you to Chase, Citibank, and American Express for supporting me over the past 3 years. Although your banking services are excellent, I always remember that I am Chinese and my mission is to revive China. Let me use this first pot of gold in my life to contribute to my motherland. This is also a strong blow to American imperialism, a final lesson for American capitalists.
Right. Again, it seems a little too on the nose for me, but we've got these landed immigrants or temporary immigrants. We've got students coming in. What's to stop them from doing that? If they use the right cards, like if they use MasterCard and Visa, then that's just going to follow them back to their motherland.
Well, maybe not, because I just got thinking, and I know you said this earlier today, and I said, well, the only credit card he mentioned was American Express. So maybe he was taking out loans with Citibank and Chase and whatnot. But I'm wondering if his credit card said, Citibank Visa. Well, I don't believe China has Citibank Visa. So if he maxes that out or, does the cash advance on it, he can take that money and go off to China and they have no recourse. So he has just pulled fiat currency out of the US cycle currency
Right.
or out of the banking system.
Yeah.
And we know that when money disappears, the banks need to print more money or ask the Federal Reserve to print more money, which then comes with more interest attached. So this gentleman, if it's real, just took 140,000 US dollars out of currency, out of circulation in the US, that Americans are going to have to go to the Federal Reserve to reprint at interest to the Americans in order to put that currency back into circulation.
And again, yeah, it's not going into the economy, and we don't want to invoke the
No.
Federal Reserve anytime we can.
And they can't really go after this guy because he's gone. He's
Right.
in another country. You can't enforce payment of that amount. It'll go into collections. It'll sit there for 7 years less a day, and then it's gone. It's
Right. So case in point, like what's going on with Cuba right now, we actually had to spend some time digging through this because we saw a story on social media that says Cuba's banks have collapsed and people can't get their money. True, not true. We couldn't run the story until we actually investigated it. So that was sort of what was going on. But in Cuba, there's a massive shortage of cash as their banking system is collapsing around them. Many Cubans have lost their savings as bank accounts are emptied and they cannot access their money at ATMs. According to the AP, long lines outside banks and ATMs in the capital, Havana, and beyond start forming early in the day as people seek cash for routine transactions like buying food and other essentials. And this guy down here is saying, like, I've been to the ATM 3 days in a row and I still don't have cash. So are the banks collapsing? We're getting there. Despair over not being able to control the fall of the Cuban peso. So basically, Cuba works very differently than we do. And we'll explain that in a half a second. We'll just do the final story here. Cuban government will suspend private companies that do not enable electronic payment within 6 months. And that was in August of 2023. So that expiry, that grace period is now over, and we're starting to see the outfall
results
from that. So now you've been to Cuba and it works differently than we do. They have different levels of currency, right?
Right. They've got 3 levels of currency. So the money as a Cuban tourist that I get is very different from the currency that those living in Cuba get. So when you go to Cuba and you tip your drivers or your housekeeping or what have you, they are not allowed to spend that money because that is tourist currency. They actually have to go to the bank and change that currency in. So the government then taxes that currency and takes their portion, and then they give them back the citizenship currency. So as a tourist, I can go into the same store as a Cuban and I can pay 10 pesos for a t-shirt, but that's in tourist pesos. A Cuban will have to pay 100,000 pesos for the same shirt. And Cubans, unfortunately, to make that kind of money, they actually have to work almost a year or longer in order to make that money. They actually only make about $12 to $14, typically $12 to $14 a month. So a $10 t-shirt for me is a year's salary for them. And so what's happened is last August, the government decided that they were also going to go to the digital ID or CBDC banking. So as of August, they announced that businesses have 6 months to turn all of their payment systems over into electronic payments. Reason being, just like we talked about here, currency is leaving their country. Businesses were being penalized if they were depositing $100,000 or 100,000 pesos, into the bank accounts. So what was happening is businesses no longer wanted to be taxed on that money and being slapped for depositing it in the banks.
Just to clarify, it was in an effort to get them to go to central bank in digital currencies, and the businesses that were still accepting cash, they were getting like penalties on that cash to encourage the force into digital money.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
then those businesses started hiring people, mules, if you like, but they weren't drug mules. They were people to take those deposits, those cash deposits out of the country, change them into US currency or some other currency, and then deposit them into banks outside of Cuba. So Cuba started losing their currency circulation. So that is the reason why banks are collapsing right now, is because a lot of the currency has left the country. So they don't have currency that they can reprint because they can't afford the interest that comes with every dollar that gets printed. So they are trying to change their system over into a CBDC system, into an electronic system, to stop the currency from leaving. But also that gives the government further control over the people and their money and the taxation that is there. So more and more people are starting to go to the banks now and trying to pull out whatever cash they can, and that cash isn't going back into circulation, which has furthered the issue of no money in the banks. People can't get money out of the banks, and we all know that the banks have worked on fractional banking forever and a day. So you know, you think you have $20, but really the bank only has $1 actually sitting in the bank. So when you go to pull out 20, the banks are giving you the 20, but then that means the next 10 people can't get money because the money's all gone. So this is what's happening in Cuba right now. There's a lack of currency. They're not able to afford to print currency. And the people who have currency are not depositing it. The businesses are not depositing that money back in the banks. So the banks have no money to give out to the people. And that currency that the businesses take in, they're sending out to other countries and changing the currency out there so they don't have to pay tax on it.
So moral of the story, folks. Get your money out of the banks. We've been saying it for months now. Get your money out of the banks. It's getting to the point where we're just not going to talk about it anymore because it's sooner or later it's going to be too late. So as it goes in Australia or the UK or the Netherlands or the US, so it goes here. UK seems to be ahead of us on a few things, and so there we got to keep an eye on them to see what's going to happen here. Digital identity certification for right to work, right to rent, and criminal record checks. So the UK is pushing digital ID. Canada is starting to talk about voluntary digital ID, while at the same time, when you want to sign up for a new business and whatnot, digital ID is mandatory. Whilst it not be mandatory for employers and landlords to use a certified IDSP, digital identity service provider, for the purpose of right to work and right to rent checks, the Home Office recommends employers and landlords use a certified IDSP. This will provide assurance that their chosen IDSP meets relevant scheme guidance and the standards set out in the trust framework. This means an employer or landlord can reduce risk. See, there you go. We got to get that risk down by recruiting and renting in a safer way, safe and effective, as they're able to assure prospective employee and tenants' identities and eligibility using consistent and more secure methods. So here we go. So the government's not going to force digital ID, but they're going to start getting the landlords and the employers to use it and enforce it. So you want a job, you want a place to live, then you got to go with the digital ID. And here we are, the government again, and you don't have to, but we recommend it. It's going this way anyway, and it's safe. If you really want to know the identity of your tenant or your employee, then this is the best way to do it. And all these people are going to start jumping on board, and they're getting the people to do their bidding for them again, and they're pitting the people against the people yet again.
And they're also, when it talks about schemes, they're also incentivizing the schemes. So what they're doing is, if you are a first-time homeowner or a first-time buyer and you sign up for your digital ID and you have put your name in the system, you will now qualify for 30% off your mortgage. Look at that. You're
Huzzah.
incentivized. And
Yeah.
same with renting. You will save X amount of dollars off your rent, and you will save X amount of dollars off of as a business. If you start a business and you force the digital ID or the electronic payments only, you know, all those cashless stores out there, why do you think they're cashless? Because they're getting a kickback, as they're being incentivized. So that's what they're doing in the UK, only it's actually written out on the government websites, the different percentages or incentives that you get for signing into the system. So that it's really encouraging, you know, 30% off your mortgage. How amazing would that be when houses here are on average, you know, $800,000, you get to save 30% off your mortgage. That's huge savings. Who isn't going to run out and sign up for the digital ID?
Right. But of course, the long play here is incentivize until there's enough people on the system, and then they may it's no
mandatory.
longer it's no longer voluntary, because then there's just not enough people to fight back, right?
Correct.
So they did it now, they'd lose the game. They know that. So back in Canada, we're going back and forth and back and forth.
I know.
Back in Canada, job growth in Canada since 2020 is the highest in the G7. So saith the Liberals. And
sounds amazing.
they're putting that out.
Congratulations.
They've been tooting this horn for all week. They 90,000 new jobs. So I started seeing cracks in that lie wall. Yeah, and so Brian Lilly really broke it down. I think he pulled a lot of this from a thread that somebody on Twitter did, and I was going to grab their Twitter thread, but it was hard to compile, so I just grabbed Brian Lilly's work on this. Firstly, and most immediately, the 90,000 job gains and continued increase in wages could give the Bank of Canada pause for concern in lowering interest rates. So they want to curb inflation, but if we're still growing, then why would they try to, slow things down? 50,000 part-time to 40,000 full-time jobs is the breakdown on that 90,000 jobs. And then 28% of the job growth was in the public sector.
Amazing.
So adding growing government and adding more jobs.
Giving more jobs to their friends.
We've called this, I don't know how many times now. StatsCan has said that we need an average of 50,000 new jobs being created each month to keep up with our immigration-driven population growth. The 90,000 jobs created didn't keep pace with the 108,000 people who entered the labor force. Between April 2023 and last month, the labor force grew by 3%, but the public sector workforce grew by 5%. There they are, growing government.
I thought Trudeau said he was going to cut government jobs. He's not doing a very good job.
Nope. The disparity in growth between 2019 and 2024 is even more startling, with the country seeing an 8% growth in the labor force and a 16% growth in the size of the civil service. So that government it's becoming a big giant behemoth. And if we shrink government again, that's going to cause GDP problems. It's going to cause, and you have to do it because they're just sucking money out of the people.
Exactly, because that's healthcare, health benefits, it's pension plans, and then of course their salaries, and that's all coming out of taxpayers' pockets.
It's just a leech. It's just a leech to suck money out of us.
Correct.
That's all it is. So, and so we should really do a show on all the ways the Liberals are destroying the economy, and this is definitely one of them.
Well, we know the Conservatives, if they get back in power, they're going to do the same thing. That each one keeps promising to reduce government, and then they don't. And we're going to reduce the Senate, and they don't. We're going to reduce programs, and they don't. And we're going to reduce spending, and they don't.
Well, of course, they've all been just passing the ball back and forth and just keeping and advancing it down the field, right? All of them. So finally, some good news, maybe not so good news. Some good news. The Isle de Madeleine pauses a mandatory $30 visitor fee, citing logistical issues.
Yay! I think that has to do with everybody fighting back and it going viral, that Quebec Ile de la Madeleine says it won't charge a mandatory $30 fee for visitors traveling to the archipelago, citing logistical issues for the system. Some said infringed on people's freedom to travel within the country, but the municipality says it's not backing off from the idea of collecting funds from tourists to help maintain infrastructure and protect the environment. Instead, it said Tuesday in a news release, it will appeal to visitors' honor and ask that they make voluntary contribution at least for this year. So
at least for this year.
Yeah. So it's coming back in. Just there was so much pushback, not only from people not on the island, but the people on the island stood up, united together. They unified against this, and that stopped it from did a 180 reversal, and it stopped it from happening. So congratulations to everybody for coming together and unifying so quickly over this, because we know where it's going. Now, that being said, if you're a tourist and you're going to leave the island, they're going to be asking you, would you like to donate today? Just like they do at Canadian Tire, would you like to donate to our Kickstart program? Or like they do at Walmart, would you like to donate to sick kids? So you're going to be pestered to donate. But again, like our lady earlier said, you have the right to say no.
Of course you do. For now, well, it's not mandatory. It's funny though, because back on Vancouver Island, where I'm from, the ferry is so costly. It's $100 to get off the island and to get on the island. And we've long said, islanders shouldn't have to pay for the. I mean, it's an extension of the highway, so we shouldn't have to pay, at least to get off the island. Like all the other islands, it's free to get off the islands, right? But except for Vancouver Island, and we've been saying for years we shouldn't have to pay this because it's an extension of the highway.
It's crazy. If you want to go into Vancouver for a nice dinner and maybe a movie, you're spending $200 for a round trip ride on the ferry.
What's with a car? With a car?
Yeah. Well, you're going into Vancouver. You're gonna want your car, but you're paying $200 for round trip for a ferry. And if you're not back on that ferry by 9 o'clock and reserve your spot for 9 o'clock, you're not on it. So now you're spending another $200-300 for a hotel. So
what's more than that in Vancouver?
So just to get off the island, you're looking at, for a one night evening, you're looking at $500 before you've even spent money.
The irony of this is, like, if they were to do the same thing for Vancouver Islanders and say just QR code to get off the island for no $100, and everybody starts going up in arms at the Vancouver Islanders, we would be like, shh, don't wreck this for us. They would be so all over that. It would be a whole different ball game.
You guys have been in a 15-minute prison forever.
Exactly.
And you just didn't know it.
I loved it. I haven't been told I couldn't leave yet, though. So, I mean, that's coming, but not yet.
No, but you had to be able to afford to leave. So the rich could leave, and those who were not rich were stuck there.
Bottom line is public pressure stopped that, and that's a good thing. The QR codes, every time we can push back, just like trying to take out those self-checkouts, do that at your own discretion and your own will. But on the flip side, Paris, who is always on the forefront of tyranny at this point, parts of Paris will be off limits now with a QR code this summer, because they've got the Summer Olympics coming in. So parts of the city are going to be shut down unless you have
a QR
permission
code
to go
enter.
in it. Yeah. So the French capital, Paris, will be split into zones this summer, with anyone wanting to enter certain areas required to show a pass on their phone. Special measures will be in place throughout the city as part of the increased security around the Olympic Games, which will start in July. Anyone wishing, so it's funny because it doesn't look like it's starting in July. It looks like it's starting ahead of time. Anyone wishing to enter certain zones, including residents, will have to apply for a special pass, Games Pass, on a platform run by the police.
Imagine that, run by the police. And once this is accepted, and people will say, well, it's just for the games. It's just while the games are here, because we all like to say, well, it's just, that QR code will not disappear.
Right.
And that's how the Paris will sneak in their 15-minute city after the games are done.
So all these little things, let's keep your eye on the money, get your money out of the bank. Definitely, and start telling people that we do not want Mark Carney Dominic LeBlanc is not that much better, but we do not want Mark Carney in for sure. It goes on and on and on with him. Everything you can imagine in the conspiratorial kind of platform, he's there. He's there everywhere. So we'll get more into that. He's also manager of the new Power Corp, and Power Corp has got a long shady history with Canada. So lots of stuff there. We'll keep an eye on him as we go.
Exactly. But in the meantime, it is a long weekend here in Ontario. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. And again, this weekend, May 17th through to the 19th, soulspath.ca. It is the hub for humankind. If you've got nothing else going on, go and discover maybe what's missing in your life, or discover some new skills, or maybe just go to feel inspired. That's going on this weekend. It is a family-friendly event, so you can take your kids. There is camping if you want to do that. Or join those of us heading over to Buffalo on Saturday with the trucker convoy to celebrate with our American friends. So that's happening on Saturday, and Monday it's a day of relax. Right? Day of relax. We will be taking Monday off. We will not be live with you, but feel free to watch one of our past episodes, get caught up, or just refresh your mind on, maybe one of the secret societies, or transhumanism, or biodigital convergence, or just
the enjoy your
system.
Family. Just have a good time and enjoy your family.
Hug your kids. Tell them you love them. Spend some quality time. Make some memories.
Exactly right. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We will see you next Thursday with a show. And so stay safe. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye now.